Matt is going to talk to us about a bunch of things. His bike, his idea with the route and where it's going to go. So I'll let him take it over. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand and he'll do his best to answer you.
Yeah, sweet. So I recognize 99% of the faces in here, but I'm Matt, if you don't know me. So hey, help yourselves to a beer anytime while I'm talking or whatever. Don't worry about it. Just march up here and grab what you need. We're going to keep it super informal. I just was going to talk about the Moore route, kind of where it came from, the impetus behind the route itself, like how I laid it out, how I worked on it. I'll talk about the ride I did a little bit on it. Obviously I brought like the gear I use in the bike, and while we're hanging out, feel free to like come up and grab whatever. I mean, these are chamois, but I did wash them, so you probably won't catch anything. I'm not a doctor, so I can't promise you. And then once they chat for a bit, they'll open it up to like Q&A. So if you've got some burning questions about the ride or route or whatever, you can fire them away. And if there's really one you can't hold on to, just I guess shout it out. It's fine. Interrupt me. I don't really care. So, but I want to start off by saying thanks to Tyler and Turbo and the GRBC crew for opening up the shop, giving us a spot to hang out and picking up a plastic container full of beer for us. So thanks guys, appreciate it.
Thanks for coming
out. Speaking of informal, I'm gonna be lazy. I'm gonna sit here on this counter. But so I'm sure you already kind of have an idea of what the Moore route is, but starting back like I forget, it was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. I was on Facebook just kind of like messing around one night, and I stumbled across this thing called Split the Mitt, and I was like, I saw like an image of Michigan with like a line all the way through it. I'm like, what the hell is this? So started clicking on it and poking around, and a gentleman created this Strava segment basically all the way across the state following the North Country Trail. And so I was kind of digging more, and there wasn't a ton of info on it. It was just like, hey, here's this segment, we should ride this sometime type of thing. There was like a little bit of chatter on there, but not much. But it kind of got the wheels turned. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea, like riding, you know, all the way across the state on, you know, presumably mostly single track and stuff. Well, you know, I kind of dug into it some more, and basically there wasn't a lot of activity on the page, and it kind of just like fell off. I think the last time I looked, nobody had visited it in like since 2015 or 2016. Fast forward a few years, like life got busy with racing or riding or whatever, doing other trips, and I don't know what it was, but it was like this year I think something sparked a renewed interest for me, because I had been kind of dabbling over the years. Like Tyler and I have done a lot of rides on the North Country Trail from like M20 up by Newaygo, like all the way up to Mesick, doing like 100-mile stretch at a time. And you know, we always really enjoyed those. We would just go like road warrior, do it all in like one day really quick and sleep in our vans type of thing. But over the years I've had a chance to ride like a whole bunch of areas and sections, just whether I'm training or exploring. And I think maybe just the timing is right. It's like I've done a lot of long races recently and kind of gotten into that realm of like these 200, 300, 400-mile rides. And so I really started putting some work into, okay, like what exactly would a route look like? And I was kind of waffling back and forth. Like I like the idea of, you know, following the NCT, but when you dig into it, the North Country Trail is, you know, it's primarily a hiking trail. We're just fortunate as cyclists that some sections they allow us to ride on. But it's designed as a hiking trail, it's routed that way, it goes through a lot of like conservancies and stuff that you can't ride. And so what that means is if you were to follow the NCT from the border to the bridge, you wouldn't ride single track until north of Newaygo. So you would ride like 250 miles of pavement and gravel that just kind of follows it with not a lot of rhyme or reason other than it's kind of roughly in the area. And I was bouncing this idea, same thing off Tyler, kind of one of my big adventure partners, and Tenor actually, my Beer Bay partner and riding buddy, and just saying, hey, what do you guys think about this? Like, I'm thinking about maybe just creating my own thing where, you know, instead of trying to follow the NCT, what if they just designed it solely for cycling? Like, if you just looked at it through the lens of if you just were going to ride as much off-road, as much dirt as possible, what would that look like? And we've got, you know, being fortunate over here in West Michigan, we got a lot of trail networks like Cannonsburg, we've got Custer, we've got Yankee, all these places, you know, kind of spread out. And so I just started picking away at, like, Gravel Map is a huge resource I use. It's just basically a Google map that users trace all the gravel roads. And over time, Michigan has gotten mostly filled in. So I just kind of started looking at the border and was like, where is the best concentration of gravel that can get me to, like, Custer, to Yankee, to all these trail sections, and I could link up. And then I knew once they got up to, like, Newaygo, you know, you could hop on the NCT and use a lot of that with some reroutes where you're not allowed to. So, you know, put all that stuff together, threw this route together, and it turned out to be a pretty hefty route. Like, if you just map doing pavement from the border to the bridge, you can get there in like 350 miles. Well, by the time I noodled around and went to all the sweet single track, is like 550. And, you know, I was like, I really wanted to, just the way I operate, it's like if I'm going to put a route or something out there, like, I want to ride it. I want to know what it's like. I don't want to just say, hey, like, go ride this thing. You know, good luck. I don't know what the hell's out there. Not that I won't do that. I have done it. I was like, if I'm going to talk about this thing and publish this thing, then I really want to go experience it. And part of my goal of just creating this route was that, you know, I always hear people talking about going to do like Colorado Trail or Arizona Trail and, like, you know, traveling really far to go do these rides, whether it's across the state or through a huge system of trails. I'm like, we got a ton of sweet trail and a ton of stuff here in Michigan. Why don't we have something for cycling, like off-roading, mountain biking, gravel, that we can all be like, hey, I'm gonna upload this route and I'm gonna go ride it, and, you know, it'll be a shared experience that lots of other people can talk about. Because has anybody here done any type of, maybe not a full, like, a Tour Divide, but like a long, like, 300-mile trail or 200-mile trail bike packing, or couple? All right. The interest is there, obviously, but what's really cool about that experience is, like, the last real long one Jenny and I did was Baja Divide, and there's like a community around it. So when you talk about doing this thing, you have a community you can leverage to gain knowledge and be like, hey, what's this section like? Or, you know, this gas station, what was that place like? Do they have tacos? Like, you can get all kinds of really cool data out of people. And, you know, otherwise, if you're just out there trying to create some epic route, it's really intimidating, right? Because you're like, if you don't have those tools or time, it's just tough. And we really enjoyed that. And so that was like the drive for me. I was like, it'd be really cool to create this route where, you know, for all of us folks in the Midwest, or hopefully even people not from the Midwest, could come, ride it, experience what we've got, and then we could share it as a community and talk about, like, how fun it was to ride across the state, or just do a section of it. So that was kind of the background of it. And as I mentioned, you know, I like to ride something or, like, scope it out before I just, like, throw it out into the wild. And the tough thing was that, you know, we're talking 550 miles, so it's like you got to find a chunk of time. And then I also race and train for a living, so it's like if you just plunk down a 550-mile ride in the middle of a race season, like, it doesn't always bode well. Speaking of which, like, today I was busy getting electrodes stuck in my hand all day, because after this ride I lost a lot of function in my left hand from nerve damage. So it's like, you risk doing that during a race season. Like, now I've off season, so I don't really care. It's like, it's more excuse to drink beer and, like, hang out and relax. But if you know, you don't want to risk things like that in the middle of race season. So I was kind of crunched for time on doing this thing. And when I had the route and everything dialed, it was kind of sitting there, but I had this, like, itch to go ride this route. And I think it was like 4 weeks ago, finally, like, I had the time or a window where it was like everything lined up. Like, the fall weather was, like, going to be somewhat reasonable, like, not super cold, not raining. And it was just before, the only thing in the way was, like, Iceman. And I was kind of like, well, whatever, it's 30 miles, like, you can figure that out. Like, if I have to, I'll duct tape my hand to the bar, like, I don't really care. So I kind of picked this time, but the tough thing was when I envisioned riding this was, like, in my head, it was like, oh, it's going to be summer, and I'm going to be like, my jersey's going to be unzipped, and I'll just be like cruising around like Ultra Romance if you follow him on Instagram. I don't have hair, but, you know, same thing. Like, the wind blowing on me, like laying under pine trees and, like, taking naps under the stars. And no, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this thing at the end of October, and it's going to be like 30 degrees. And the weather window was about 3 days, so I'll kind of jump into from the route to the ride. So when I was kind of waffling on whether or not I was going to do the ride until about 2 days before I actually did it. And I got this bike about a week before the ride. So I got like one and a half rides in on it. And I was like, it's good. Like, I mean, I have my measurements and stuff, and I've ridden like all the salsa bikes and the old cutthroats. So I'm like, oh, that'll be good. And threw all the stuff on there. But part of my goal too was like not to be out there for 2 weeks doing this thing. Like I wanted to kind of do it, not necessarily like I did like all in one ride. I was hoping to get some sleep and some relaxation in there, but I wanted to pack light. And so everything you see on this table this is all the clothes that I had for the ride, minus this wool shirt that I'm wearing. So I tossed like, as light as I could go. I had food and stuff in there, but you don't really want like a 60-pound bike if you're trying to cover some serious ground. And my goal, like I didn't really know, like I was familiar with most of it, but I'm like, if I could get this thing done in 3 or 4 days, like that would be great. And then, when reality kind of hits of like every time you stop at a gas station, every time you get to like, I don't know who put all this 2-track in there, but you get to some really weird 2-track and you're like in the middle of the night wandering around in the mud and stuff like that, like you lose a lot of time. So going light really helped a lot. But yeah, the ride. So basically my wife Jenny dropped me off down at the border, and I think it was like a Friday morning because I was like, I want to get started in the daytime. I want to be able to get some miles behind me. And the way the route shook out is there's stretches of single track in the first 200 miles, but there's a lot of gravel and stuff. So my hope was to kind of like hammer all the way back up by Grand Rapids, get there in the first day, ride a bunch of other stuff that's mostly gravel at night, and then tackle like single track during the daytime. And I had her drop me off, and when I got going, it was like 24 degrees, which I didn't really count on because I was looking at the weather. I'm like, oh, it seems like mid-30s, like wrong. I didn't really look at the right spot, so I put like everything, all the stuff I had on. I mean, I just had knickers. I didn't even do pants. So I had knickers and wool socks and like this much skin showing. So I brought a tub of Embro cream with me, and I used that liberally. But got started Friday morning, started chugging away. And a lot of the first section of the route, I'll kind of talk about the route to itself while I'm talking about the ride. Starts out as like gravel, it's pretty flat down there. I have the official route. I made a start. I wanted to have like a state park or somewhere to camp. So it starts at Pokagon State Park, which is down by the border. It's just like 5 miles south. Well, since I was hustling and I didn't want to be out there forever, I was like, drop me right at the border. So I started like right by the border sign in front of somebody's house, and they thought I was crazy because I'm like unpacking all this stuff. And I got going. And that first section is like flat gravel, it's pretty chill, and it's actually really pretty and scenic down there. I wasn't sure what to expect because you go over towards like the border by Detroit or over towards Chicago. It's not exactly like the most scenic unless you're on the lakeshore, but it was really nice, and it was great because I got to scope out a lot of that stuff. I hadn't ridden like all of it, and it's all really nice gravel. It gets you like, it kind of gets your feet underneath you, if you will. Like if you're doing, if you've done like a long hiking trip and you're carrying a huge backpack, you don't really want to start like scrambling up a 14er. Like you want to start like out on the plains and get used to it. And so it was a great way to kind of get the route going. And I think it's about 70 miles to the first single track. You get up by Custer, and the route I have, especially like some trails like Yankee are directional. I route it to the single track, and then some of them where it makes sense, it routes through the single track. But like that one, Custer's a loop if you're familiar with it. And so I just kind of route to the park, and you can do it as an option. Like if you want to do extra single tracks, by all means. So I got through there, got over to Yankee, and where you actually get on single track as part of the route. And moving along, kind of hitting my stride, you get like 100 miles through your legs, and you're like, okay, like I got a percentage done now. Like I like numbers, so in my head I'm like, okay, I'm like 18% done. Like it's a real number now, like And I started hearing this like creaking on my bike. I'm like, what is that? Like we spent a lot of time, and I hadn't listened to any music, so I'm just listening to myself and my bike, which is kind of scary. But I started hearing this creaking, and I'm like, okay, like it's probably nothing. Just keep riding, it's fine. And then it's like creaking is like louder. I'm like the little voice in the back of my head is like, you should probably check it out. So I'm like, I stop and I start kind of looking at stuff, the usual. Like me, it's just my bottom bracket. I grab my crank arm and it's almost off the bike. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad I stopped because that'd be a huge bummer to like strip this crank out. So I'm like looking at it, I'm like, all right, get my multi-tool and I'll just like tighten this thing up, no problem. Well, the one thing I didn't do, which I'll harp on people about when I write blogs about doing this stuff, is like make sure you have every tool to do everything. I didn't have every tool to do everything. That crankset on this one I didn't really think about. I use the same ones on all my other bikes, but since this one was just sent to me, I just ran with it. It takes a 16 millimeter Allen wrench, which if you do any wrenching, it's like a giant Allen wrench that nobody has. When you buy these cranks, they send you a special adapter that you put an 8 mil wrench in. And anyways, I didn't carry it. So I'm like riding and being like the master of efficiency I try to be. I'm like on the phone riding. I call Middleville Auto Garage. And I'm like, hey, you guys have a 16 mil Allen wrench? And they're like, who is this and what do you want? I'm like, I'm riding my bike and I got this problem. And they're like, yeah, we don't carry like. Nothing uses a 16 mil Allen wrench. Like they didn't believe me. They thought I was totally full of shit. They're like, okay, just come by and we'll figure it out, weird guy. So I swing in there and like this dude climbs out of his truck and he's like, all right, he's like got his little set of Allen keys. Like, oh, I'll tighten this up for you. And he's like, I'll be damned. He's like, you weren't shitting me. And so like one trick you can do for tightening large Allens is if you stack two together, you can basically add two and like cram them in there. Because I was telling them that and they were also looking at me like I'm an idiot. And I'm like, seriously, it works. And so I just started like stuffing Allens in there and we got it tightened up. I also poured like half a bottle of Loctite in there. I haven't tried to take it off since. I'm pretty sure it's on there for good. But reefed it down. Those guys were like pretty stoked because they learned something. Like I didn't know you could do that with Allen wrenches. So we high-fived and they didn't charge me anything and I kept rolling. But I'm like carrying on. And the cool thing about the ride was like a lot of times I'll post about an adventure ahead of time if I'm like 100% on it. But this one I kind of wanted just to do organic because I wasn't sure if I would get to GR and be like, you know what, like I've seen enough, it's too cold, I'm gonna call it. Or like if like Jenny was up doing peak to peak in Crystal, like maybe I was gonna go up there. I wasn't totally committed that I wanted to ride 550 miles yet. And I just let a few people know, like I let Tyler know, I think like Tanner knew, like my buddies knew. And like the great thing was that since it was like a small group, a lot of people were kind of like checking in on me, like, hey, like, where are you going to be at this time? Or maybe we'll try to swing by and say hey. And one of my buddies, Eric Chase, I don't think, is Super Chief here? No, he's not here, but him and his family every Friday night do like a pizza party. And it just so worked out that I was coming into GR around sunset when they were doing pizza. So I timed it just right where I rolled in up by, like I cut through by the game area and by Ski Hill. Side note, in the fall they do this thing called zombie paintball at the Ski Hill. I got in there when they were doing zombie paintball and it was like they'll shoot at anything that's moving. I like heard some stuff in the woods, like some tunes and stuff. I was like, oh, somebody's jamming me. I thought it was maybe Tenor in the hot tub or something. I'm like cruising through and all of a sudden I hear like choo choo. I'm like, what? And I see like one of the zombie people and it hit me all at once. I'm like, shit, they're doing the paintball. And it's like high school kids dressed up as zombies. He's like, don't get shot, bro. They're gonna shoot you. So I'm like walking with my bike through the woods and like it's like 170 miles, so all I could think about was pizza and like getting warm for 2 minutes. So I was just like, all right, screw it. So like the Bill Hill section, I was just like giving it hell, going real fast, like trying to outrun the paintball kids. But they will seriously, if you go there, they will shoot at anything. So, but I got through there, got to Chase's house, and if you're shop here regularly, you probably know the mechanic Garrett. Everybody knows Garrett, obviously. He was also out there trying to get some photos of me along the way, which if you've been to the Facebook group I created, there's a bunch of pictures in there if you want to check those out. But all the good ones that like, oh, this looks like a legit picture, Garrett took them. The rest of them that look like, what is this? That's probably I took it. So I met all those folks up there and I was like, 170 miles in, like feeling pretty decent, kind of like where you're tired enough where you don't really care anymore. You're like, okay, this is good. Like, just gotta ride through the night now. And especially with pizza, I had stocked up on a bunch of that, and like they dried out my gloves and shoes in the dryer, so it was pretty deluxe accommodations for about a half hour. And from there, the route cuts up by Luton, so I know, like technically you're not supposed to ride Luton at night, don't tell anybody, but rode Luton at night, cut through there, and when I was working on the route, one thing I think is great for if you're trying to make like a tough, challenging route, it's nice to have some also like easier sections where you can recover a bit and like it's not totally in your face the whole time. And so to get out of Rockford, like I tossed the route on the White Pine Trail. It goes up there towards Sand Lake. And it's just a great way to kind of get away from the cities and get back out into rural stuff. And I was very grateful. I put it on the White Pine Trail because it was about 200 miles and I was feeling pretty smoked. So it was kind of nice just to like chill in the aero bars and kind of half sleep, half like ride down the trail. And what's that?
Close one eye to like half sleep?
Yeah, you just kind of, if you start hitting the edges or clip a tree, it'll wake you right up.
Hello.
But cruise down there and, there's always like, it's a totally different thing when I'm like sitting behind the computer making a route with like coffee and my PJs. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm putting that in the route. Or like all of like the really gnarly stuff, I'm really stoked on it. And then when it comes out, I'm actually out riding the route, like I even piss myself off sometimes. So I'm like, why did you like, down by Millville, I put this section called the Dragon's Tail in there, which is like bushwhacking through thorns and stuff. So FYI, when you get to Millville, if you're doing the ride, I rode it too, and it definitely sucked. But
Then you take the K with it.
yeah, that shows how much we messed around when we rode it the first time. So anyways, like, plotted down the trail, miles are ticking by. I got to like that 200 mile, milestone. I'm like, all right, like this is still going really good. Like I feel good. Like 200 miles is what's another 350. It's just like a DKXL after the 200. Like, if you break it down in like digestible terms, it's not so bad. And got up by Newaygo, and I remembered like Joe knows I'm talking about all the sandy roads up there. I put all those in, so that was great. I was thrilled about that at night. And there's a couple of sections I hadn't pre-ridden, so it was like, looking forward to getting to them. One of them, found out the hard way, it's in a swamp. So there's a section like right by M37. I was like, why doesn't anybody ever ride this? It's like by the North Country Trail, it's like not on the highway. Oh, it's because it's a swamp. And got through there, and like the next big stop that I was trying to focus on was like along the route. I tried to route it, obviously as much dirt, but also where it made sense to get some resupplies too, because it's nice if you don't have to carry like 3 days worth of groceries on your bike. Like if you can stop every 50 or 75 miles, it's a lot more convenient. And also like if you want to camp the route or you want to like do it leisurely, it gives you a lot of opportunities to just not be out in the middle of DFE. And the one tough stretch I knew coming up was like from White Cloud, there really was nothing as far as like 24-hour access until Mesick, which was 150 miles later. And the other tough part is it's pretty much all single track on the North Country from White Cloud all the way up to Mesick. The problem was I got there at 3 in the morning and I was kind of half asleep, so I was like, I got a coffee, a package of cookies, and of course a donut, because Wesco has pretty good donuts if you don't know. And I think I maybe bought like 2 things of jerky and some crackers and stuff, and that was it. I just was like, all right, I think I'm good, and just like wandered out of there because I was tired. Not a wise move, and I'll get to that point. But I got out of White Cloud, I started tooling around. I'm sure people here have ridden that. Who's ridden the section like from M20 to Nichols Lake? It's like the 17 mile. It's an awesome stretch. Got there, it was like 4 in the morning, and it's like super peaceful, just riding through there. It was foggy, really enjoying it. Fast forward a little bit longer, like the routes. Like I rode this bike, and I had a suspension fork, but I was kind of like, oh, it's fine. Like I'll just ride it rigid. Like I want to experience the bike as it's supposed to be. Well, like I was regretting that decision about 20 miles later, because that section is pretty rooty. And when you're just riding that, it doesn't seem that bad, but when you've been riding for like 24 hours, it starts to get on your nerves a little bit.
Or on your hands nerves.
Yeah, on your hands nerves. So it's like bumping along through there. And I think that's when it kind of everything started to catch up to me too, is like the whole day, it started to get really cold. It got into the 20s, which if you're just wearing like knickers and like I had my wool jersey, but I put everything on that I had, like that and my shake dry jacket, which theoretically is enough as long as you're moving at a good pace. But I got tired to the point where I couldn't like focus my vision. And I was just doing like 5 miles an hour, like kind of bouncing around the trail. And like my hands were tired, so I was trying to use my aero bars in the trail, which is like also not a pro move. And that brings me to my first pro tip. If you're ever going to do an adventure ride or go do something like that, carry some stuff to make a fire. This little kit, it weighs about an ounce. It's got a little lighter. There's a wad of toilet paper, which is multi-use if you're in a hard spot, and a little SBIT tab, which you can take a closer look later. But all that is like solid fuel. And SBITs are kind of like a high pollutant charcoal. Like you light it, it won't go out. It'll burn for like 3 or 4 minutes. So I was plodding along, and I could just like, I had enough wits about me to know like I wasn't in a good place. I was really cold, and I was like cold, but I was sweating, which is a bad sign, because if you start to get like hypothermic, like your body will actually start feeling like you're overheating, what makes you want to take clothes off. So I stopped, and this was right by Timber Creek Campground. I got to there, and I was like, okay, I need to stop and like address this situation. And leaned my bike against the tree. I was like, I'm just gonna make a little fire, because I knew I had that fire kit. Got this little fire going, and then I just woke up like 20 minutes later. Like, got the fire going. I just like, I think I got, the minute I got warm, I was just like, all right, night night, and I just kind of like conked out. But the handy thing is that once the fire goes out, you wake back up because you're cold again. So, and it kind of timed well with, that was at like 7:30 in the morning when that happened. And so as soon as I woke up, because I was cold again, the daylight was out. And that 20 minutes, like, I guess you call it a power nap, was like, it just flips a switch, like, because I had a dream and everything, like, in that period of time. Like, it was enough to go, like, right to deep sleep for, like, 15 minutes in the dirt. I was just, like, face down in the leaves. I'm sure somebody would have came across it and they'd be like, what is this? This is a fancy hobo. It's and, yeah, got up, but then, you know, the first thing right after that, I realized, I think I was down to like half a Slim Jim and like a bottle of drink mix, which lemonade drink mix and Slim Jim and a piece of chocolate is like not a good morning breakfast. So I was like cruising through the single track. I'm like, okay, I at least could move. And that gave me some energy to be like, you know, mentally you're kind of like, okay, I'm making progress. And I had already made up my mind, like the first people that come across, I'm totally cornering them and seeing like whatever they have, I'm shaking them down. I saw these like, there was like some people probably in their early 20s, they were having this nice like, I'm sure scenic, like they had their hammocks up, they were like in their down, like, oh, it's like Patagonia commercial. And I just come rolling up, I'm sure like disheveled and smelling like, I'm like covered in soot from the fire. I'm like, you guys got any granola bars and waters? Or, and they're like, oh yeah, here, they're like throwing candy bars at me. Just go away. So, they were really nice, they were really nice. They were like, I'm sure I probably looked rough, because like, you sure you just need granola bars? You don't like need a doctor?
Pants?
Yeah, or pants. I don't know.
It's 27.
And so I was lucky, like, that's another thing, like, if you're out there and you're hard up, don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, I already knew the minute I saw some people, I was going to be like, hey, what do you got? And they hooked me up with some bottles of water and like 8 Nature Valleys. So I had a total buffet on Nature Valley. The honey was pretty good. But kept chugging along, you know, that section, like I said, is all NCT, so it's slow going, but if you have food and energy, like, it kind of ticks along, and it's scenic, and into the, you know, the sun came out, actually, so it was pretty nice. I started getting in more familiar territory, which, you know, gives you that comfort zone, cut through Big M, where Lumberjack is, and just getting to, like, I knew, the one thing I asked Jenny to do was, because I knew that stretch was going to be tough, I had her toss a gallon of water up by Big M. There's like a water pump there, which any other time of the year you could use, but they shut it off, I think at like basically Labor Day. And just now about to get there, I was like, kind of in my zen moment. Like there's this big downhill out of Big M, so I was really enjoying it. And all of a sudden I heard this rushing sound behind me. It sounded like a bear or something. It scared the shit out of me.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was like still really tired, you know. I'm like, what? Like kind of freaked out, almost went off the trail.
Scary.
It was a farm team, Joe Pro, and his teammate, just out there for a morning rip in the middle of nowhere. I was like, oh, hey, is that Matt? Hey, what's up, Beard? Like, hey guy, thanks for sharing. He's like, I wasn't going to warn you, but I figured you'd just hear me. I'm like, yeah, I heard you, so did my pants.
And you burned your toilet paper.
No, I still had toilet paper.
Okay.
I got there, and at that point though, like I still knew Misek was far off, so I'm like, you know, I don't want to push my luck too much with like that section from Redbridge to Marilla is pretty aerobic. Like there's some big climbs, some rough terrain, and I knew like just off route in Brethren there's this bar called the Bear Tracks. They have like killer fried stuff. So I swung off route. It was an extra 5 miles, but I didn't even care because it was like fried chicken fingers, French fries, and then like weird chat with local people. Which is probably weird for them, not for me. They're like, who is this dude hanging out in spandex? Like, I was like drying stuff out at the bar. I think they thought I had like my own veritable Wilson built in the chair next to me. So I had like gloves standing and my pack and my helmet. Like looked like a little creature in the chair. But yeah, so that section, you know, it's all single track. Went through Misek, and then that was when like that peak to peak race was that same day. And so another buddy who does photos, Ron Mendering, he swung out. He got some cool photos too, like right around sunset time. And it was like a nice high point because you see somebody, you're like, oh hey people, like hi friends, and like get to chat a little bit, which was great because the next section of trail, which I did in the write-up. So if you read about, you know, if you're thinking about doing this. The next section of trail outside of Misek is super gnarly. It's not really meant for biking. It's just like a bunch of boardwalks and like people just put stairs up and down these creeks. And also I think nobody goes there. So if you ever go ride that section, beware, bring a weed whipper or something with you, a machete, I don't know. And like some serious navigation. Like I have my Garmin, which helped a lot, but all the blazes from the North Country are gone. There's like nothing out there.
Whoa, that's scary.
And you get further past that towards Fife Lake up by Traverse City there too. There's another super gnarly section that's just basically hidden in a swamp. And so I hit that at nighttime. And that's where it's really nice. Like I was just gonna do the handlebar light, but I was like, you know, out of all the single track, I'm gonna bring a headlight. Because if you're riding in the dark, if you've done it much, you know, like the ones on your handlebars are great until you're turning, and then it's looking a different way from where you want to look. So having the headlight really helped because that section of trail basically does this like herky-jerky thing down through all these creeks, and you get down there and it's just a cedar swamp. And there was like no blazes, so you're like looking through this creepy, foggy cedar swamp. It's like 3 in the morning, and you're like, where is this? And like the way the trail goes, it has a lot of 90s in it, which aren't intuitive for biking. So you might blast into the cedars where it's nice and open, like, oh, okay, this trail's sweet. And you're like, oh, this isn't a trail. Like, and then you look back, and it's like the trail made this hard left, you know, on this, you know, 2x4 bridge over the creek. But chugged through all that stuff, and I was trying to hustle because Garrett was, as I mentioned, trying to document basically the whole ride. So he was spending his weekend like trying to find me
He was here
wherever I
at work
was.
Saturday. And then he was here at work Saturday.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he worked Saturday.
Oh my gosh, they
Drove
went
back
hunting you
up.
down?
Yeah, he drove all the way up, and I was supposed to meet him at this beacon and bridge. And like before, I thought I was being like, you know, when I was in Misek, I texted him, and I was like, yeah, I think it'll probably take me 4 hours. And then like halfway through, I'm like, yeah, it might take me 6 hours. And I'm like, even further, I'm like, it's gonna take me 8 hours.
Oh my god.
And I didn't get to that beacon and bridge. Like that section, I averaged 3 miles an hour.
Oh.
That was like so much of like off the bike. I posted some pictures if you've seen one where it's like it's all this tall grass and like a little NCT thing. Like that whole trail was like that.
Oh, yeah,
where you're just like
yeah.
choose your own adventure and like there's trees down. So if you're looking to do trail work out by Fife Lake, get up there and get some trail karma. And so that's like night 2. Got into that, and after that, like you get up towards, Vasaland, where, the Holy Week was just a few weeks ago. And so once you get up there, I mean, it's super nice. I mean, the NCT itself is kind of rugged, and I just tried to stick with that because if you've ridden much up there, it's like a crazy rat's nest. The trails, like they're all great, but it can be confusing. So for simplicity's sake of the route design, I just figured if we just stick with NCT, it's blazed, it'll at least be kind of the differentiator from like all the Vasa stuff. But got up there, cruised through that stuff at night, and I was really looking forward to the second day because I mentioned I just like had that little dirt pass out, so it was up for about 48 hours at this point. And really counting on that daylight to come out. I got to Kalkaska just before that, but was kind of in like a similar situation. It was really cold, like a bunch of freezing fog was hanging out in the woods. So when you're riding through it, you're just like getting covered in this moisture. And even with like the shake dry jacket on, it's like you're still perspiring. So I got really cold, and I, still had my fire starter. So I like actually ran the Iceman course, like 3 feet from the course. I just like popped into the woods, like had a little fire and a dirt nap, and I wanted to time it well too because in Kalkaska there's only a few places to get resupply, and the one gas station I really wanted to go to that had microwave waffles wasn't open until like 7 a.m. So I was kind of over like the Slim Jims and chocolate and lemonade at that point. But got in Kalkaska. The few sections after that, that's where I had to start. Like it was taking me a long time, and I knew. It's like Jenny had already said that she would hang out up north until Sunday to give me a ride home from the bridge, like when I finished.
Kalkaska was Sunday morning now, right?
Yeah, so I'm already into like Sunday morning. I'm at like mile 400 and change, but then the rate that trail was going, I had to start thinking about like, okay, this is gonna keep taking me a really long time, and I didn't want her to have to like hang out up there for 2 days basically. And so that's where I had to start kind of making some decisions, and I hit this trail outside Kalkaska, that NCT section. It's like this trough that's like this wide, so if you try to ride it, you just put your pedals into the ground the whole time.
Oh,
so I had to just like ride through the field, and I was like about to like totally just like be like, screw the route, I'm gonna ride path or something, like find me a bike trail. But then the next section after that totally redeemed itself. It was like Dumb and Dumber. I think I was like Floyd in the woods, like, you just totally redeemed yourself. It was like this really sweet, swoopy, I think they must have just done a bunch of work to it. It's got a big climb, but then it's like the sweet descent, you go down by the lake. And so it's like, within these long rides, you have these emotional ups and downs. And that was like where I was pretty low, like, all right, I'm about over this. Like, and I had all these things in my head too, where like, when I was doing this ride, like every little milestone, like my longest ride before that had been 350 miles. So I kind of had in the back of my head, I was like, if you just get to 400, that's like pretty respectable. You just be like, I'm done, But then like the other part of me was like, I've spent 2 days riding this, like I've invested this much, and what am I gonna write about if it's like, hey, here's a sweet route, I rode 2/3, good luck with that. I'm like, it's a little more compelling if you do the whole thing than like basically throwing out, something you only half did. And that kind of kept me going. And then I was getting texts from people too. They're like, "Oh, you're doing great. Like, looks like you're having a good time." I'm like, "Yeah, sure am." And I like kept chugging along, and then up towards Boyne. I'll just kind of fast forward a bit. You get up there, and I wasn't like not looking forward to it, but I also was a little apprehensive because the stuff in Boyne, all that NCT, has a boatload of climbing, and it's pretty rugged and like slow going. And when I got there, I was like by Chandler Hills where a bunch of the big climbing started. So I was just about to roll on a single track, and I noticed it was like pretty decimated through there. Well, they were logging, so I was like, oh, a trail closed. Like, shucks. Like, guess I'm gonna cruise the gravel, but. That's the one section on the whole ride where I had to deviate from the route. I just kind of followed it, and I thought I was being really clever. From doing like Mountain Mayhem, I'm like, oh, there's some sweet roads here. I'm gonna enjoy some awesome gravel. I had turned into this like seasonal road. I think I would have been better off just walking the single track. So it was just like sand, and like I think I found the biggest climb out there. I was like chugging up this thing, and. As I mentioned, it's like my longest ride had been 350, so I started to get into like this uncharted territory of like 2.5 days, like 50 hours of not sleeping.
Oh.
I started to get this really weird feeling where like my vision wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It was like, I felt like I was almost looking at myself when I was riding a little bit, just like kind of lightheaded, you know, and started having this strange feeling. And I had crossed paths with Jenny, and she was up there kind of rolling around. She wasn't really like crewing or anything, but she was out with the dog. So, you know, I was like, well, she's right here, I guess, if I need anything. But some of those areas, if you get really far out there, like there's no cell service. So if you like passed out or something, like, I don't know who would find you. But I was starting to get, that was where I was closing on 500 miles and it started to get pretty suspect. So I'm like, I don't know, like I haven't felt like this before. I don't know what it means. Like maybe I'm just like being a sissy. I don't know. But like I was like, you know, the next like time, like milestone was Petoskey. I'm like, okay, just get to Petoskey. So I'm chugging along. I get through the last of the seasonal road, and then I get the second wing. So I was on pavement for a hot minute and feeling good about that. And when I got into Petoskey, like I routed it, so you just basically take the bike path along the lakeshore because it's the most scenic option. Like you could doodle around in town, but why not enjoy the views of Lake Michigan, you know, if you come that far. And from there, you know, once I was there, I actually was like gonna text Jenny and be like, hey, like maybe meet up, try to take a nap in the van. And of course, like Jenny was she was out on an adventure. She was like, didn't have time for it. It's a good thing, 'cause I'm sure like if I had climbed in that van looking back on it, I probably would have fell asleep for like 2 days, you know, and not kept going.
Yeah.
But yeah, the last push, like there was a lot of climbing in that section. There's some new stuff I hadn't ridden before. I found a 400-foot climb up there. I didn't know there was one up there. By Nub's Knob, there is a legit seasonal road climb. It's on the route, so if you ride it, you're welcome. I did it at night, and the last like pretty foolish mistake I made was when I crossed paths with Jenny earlier in the day. She brought me some pizza and a Coke. It was like the middle of the day, you know, it was nice and warm, and knowing that I was getting close to the end, I like didn't want to carry any more than I had to, so I ditched some of my warm layers. And so all I had was like a wool t-shirt, a gore layer, and this thin wind jacket. Well, I had to ride, like I got up there and I got up by Wilderness and it got dark. And as soon as it got dark, freezing fog came in from the lake. And all I had was like a few layers. And when I looked down at my Garmin, it was 21 degrees. And I had like a t-shirt and a rain jacket. So that last like 15 miles, I think I was just like frozen to the aero bar, just like trying to get it done. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, after it took 61 hours, but after 61 hours, made it from the border all the way up there, which was, you know, there wasn't really a fanfare. It was like Jenny and Garrett trying
Well, we'll give you some fanfare. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was a super cool feeling. I mean, another side note, if you do this ride, don't plan it for late fall because everything in Mackinac City is closed, so you'll get a really lame bar burger. But yeah, it was the longest ride I'd done by far, and actually doing the route all at one time. While there was some of it I kind of don't remember so well, like generally, like, you know, I got to take it all in and kind of experience it all as like one fluid ride.
Cool.
And yeah, that was the ride. So,
Unreal.
well, kind of droned on. How are we doing on time?
What are your future plans
So,
for the
yeah.
ride?
So basically for, you know, I had a lot of people right after it, like asking, like, is this going to be a race? Like, there's a lot of people out there. They're like, are we going to race this? And it's like, and I was already anticipating that stuff because, like, the Tour Divide or anything else, like, people race it. But when I was putting it together, I'm like, I've been on both ends of it, where like when Jenny and I did Baja Divide, we just rode it at our own speed and took it all in, and that was like one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I've done some really long races on stuff like that, and I mean, it was a cool experience, but more from like a personal, you know, victory, like the actual, you know, when you're trying to race something, you don't see it all and take it all in like you might want to. And so kind of my idea for it was just to put it out there and put out the resources, encourage people to take the time to like bike pack it. I wouldn't really recommend trying to ride the whole thing all at one time. Like I wouldn't do it again, I don't think. But
I don't think.
well, you never know. You don't never say never. But, you know,
Maybe downhill.
so what I've done is right now I publish the routes out there. I made like a Facebook page because Facebook's free and you don't have to maintain it like a website. So there's a Facebook page out there for it. It's called the Michigan Off-Road Expedition. And I toss some photo galleries in there. That's where I'll post like any updates or any information. And I know everybody's not on Facebook, so I have a poorly maintained blog that I basically use once a year for random things. So I put a brief write-up, kind of like the history and like what I'm telling you right now. I toss that in the blog form. There's links to the route. I put a route description in there, which has like mileage breakdown. So it'll tell you basically like, here's how many miles it is to get to Yankee Springs. Here's how many, like all the notable places where you might get resupply, something you find useful. And I have a one-page route description document too, which basically gives you like, it breaks it down into sections like, okay, from 0 to Custer, like mostly gravel, rolling, easy riding, you know, and then the sections like that when I was talking about Fife Lake, I have big asterisks like warning, like this section is adventurous, like consider a reroute, here's the route. So those are good tools if you're thinking about this is something you might want to do, or for people that are interested in doing the ride. You know, you can use that to, you know, make the ride your own. Like I would encourage people, you know, say if it's like you never want to ride the whole thing, even as a bike pack trip, like you could pick sections of it, you know, and the route's out there, you could ride it point to point, you could outback it, whatever you want. But that's kind of my goal for it, just a resource. So if people want to do some type of an epic adventure in our own state and see a lot of cool stuff, then it's there. One thing that I plan to do for 2020 is pick a date, basically put one on the calendar. Nothing formal, just super chill. Like if you're familiar with like the Tour Divide or other big rides, a lot of times they'll pick a date and call it a grand depart. And basically all that date means is like, here's a date where if you're interested in doing this and you want to potentially ride with other like-minded people or experience like riding it with around groups or when there might be more people, it's a date that people can kind of just pick and put on the calendar and, you know, meet up, and there might be 5 people there might be 50 people, like, but it's a good opportunity to basically just put something on the calendar, kind of targeting like early July, just because it's kind of a slow time of year for like folks that race, and it's also like summer for teachers, and it's also
Daylight.
warm, all the key things you might want. It is also bugs though, so
Seriously.
I didn't have any bugs. I didn't get bit by a mosquito once. So I got that going on.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's all out there. We got the
Cool.
blog, we got the Facebook. You can find that page. I'll keep like updates. So like if anything changes with the route, I'll share that. And over the winter months, like it kind of took me a while to get out there because I've had issues with my left hand, so I can't really type great right now. But I plan on, I'll do like a brief blog like about kind of the story I just told about the ride I did. I'll do a better breakdown about like maybe gear that I carried. You know, I brought the stuff just so you can check it out if you want or ask questions, but my bike is exactly as I rode it, minus all the dirt and garbage that was all over it. So yeah, just wanted to toss it out there and, you know, create something. Hopefully a few people will be interested in doing it or just doing part of it, or, you know, I hope to bike pack it next summer and experience it in a more relaxed manner. And the only other thing is, you know, I don't want to leave arguably one of the best parts of Michigan out, is there is an upper peninsula section as well. So the lower peninsula is 560 miles, and then the upper peninsula, I have the route all charted, it's 499. So the whole route is basically, you know, by the time you mess around and stuff, it's about 1,100 miles. So sometime in the spring or early summer, I hope to get up and do the UP section. Hopefully not in this fashion, like probably with some sleep and some, you know, actual relaxing in there. But you can stay tuned for that too. That should be pretty cool. It goes through like Marquette, it goes through Adventure Mountain, it goes through a bunch of single track centers up there, and then I'm sure a lot of weird stuff too. So yeah.
Where's the finish?
The finish, yeah, I guess we'll share it. So the finish, I thought about it, because I'm an engineer, so I like things to be concise, and I like, you know, like I started like the route by the border. I was like, okay, I got to end at the border. But then if you look at the border of Wisconsin and Michigan, sorry if you're from up there, but there's not like a whole lot of compelling places to end an epic ride. And so the end point will be at the Lake of the Clouds overlooking Porcupine Mountain. I just thought, you know, if you ride that far, you want something pretty epic to look at. So that's the plan. So it'll traverse from the bridge all the way over there. And if you're already wondering, like, how the hell do you get across the bridge? You just roll up there. They got a phone. You pick it up, and the Mackinac Bridge Authority will toss you in a pickup and take you across. So yeah, you don't need to do anything like overly special. You might have to wait a little bit, but get a beer and a burger and chill out, and they'll come get you. So yeah, might as well toss it open to Q&A. So
Is the coast-to-coast route available online?
yeah, so the coast to coast route, which is another traverse of Michigan, just basically like call it like the belt of Michigan. That's on the coast to coast website. It's posted all the time. That's the GTX files are off. So.
Oh, man.
What else? Any kind of questions?
How long did it take you to recover?
You know, surprisingly, really the biggest issue has just been my hand. Like, usually I'm used to like numbness in the hand, but I've had some functional issues, so that's been really the big thing. But I mean, at Iceman, I had
You
my
did
best,
see him do
best
Iceman,
race there.
right?
So
Oh, that's already coming
yeah,
in.
I mean, I felt my legs felt fine in like 2 or 3 days. So
Wow.
I'm also used to it too. So.
Yeah, right.
If you do enough dumb things, your body just kind of gives up on trying to complain, and you just beat it into submission.
Yeah.
Did you ever figure out what that weird out-of-body experience was that you experienced?
I don't really know. I mean, I guess it would probably just be something tied to like sleep deprivation. I mean, I had never before that been awake more than like 50 hours, so it's kind of like the first time. I mean, in total, other than the ride, I was awake for about 72 hours. So that's like the longest I've been awake for. It got kind of weird at times, but it really wasn't like all that bad. So.
Unreal.
Would you do it on that bike again then? Was that the bike you think was right?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the bike. I would totally put a suspension fork on. While it is compliant, like, you know, I think that's compliant within reason. Like if you're trying to ride, that route has like 40, I think I did the math, it's close to 40% single track. And there's a lot of roots and stuff in that trail. So there were some times after a while where like I didn't physically want to touch the handlebars. Like I did everything I could to like use my elbows on the, like that's why I use aero bars. People always see aero bars and they think you're trying to go fast. Like aero bars are great because when you are relaxing them, it takes all the weight off your hands. And so it keeps that blood flow. You know, if you're resting like on this pad where your ulnar nerve is, like if you rest on that for too long, I mean, you get nerve issues. So having the multiple hand positions was clutch because sometimes I get in the drop, sometimes the arrows, and then just having all the mounting options like was really nice. I didn't get it in time, but they make a whole frame pack for this that bolts in really nicely. I wish I'd had that because I had these things like packed to the gills, but yeah, I would do this setup again because you do have like a lot of gravel and stuff, so that's kind of the challenge is like, you know, sometimes you might really want a full suspension bike, but then other times like you're ripping gravel, so you don't want to be dragging a big bike around. So, yeah.
Maybe a novice question, but are you adjusting tire pressure and everything as you're going through the ride and all that to ride now?
Yeah, so this is, Derek Acker at Three Toes made these bags for me, and that's my pump down there. I had him do it specifically because I wanted to have my pump like right where I could just take it on and off the bike. So when I was on gravel, I would crank my tires up to like 30 PSI, say. And then when I got to the single track, I think there was one point where I probably had less than 15 PSI in there because my hands got so tired. And I basically went as low as I could go without destroying my rims. So I changed it quite a bit and kept it handy there.
You tubeless on that? Or?
Yeah. So these are set up tubeless. I put a fair bit of extra stands in there, and then repair-wise carried like tire plugs. There's actually this little pack down there has 2 tubes, a multi-tool, 2 CO2s, a tire boot, and a plug kit in there.
Okay.
But they have their tubolitos, which if you haven't seen them, they're like these really tiny, expensive inner tubes. They roll up super small, but they also come at a price. So for things like this, it's worth it to me to, like, you know, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you skimp on the repair stuff, you're probably going to need it. And if you carry all the repair stuff you need, you'll probably never use it. But I'd rather carry it than, like, I've done DK and I've had to wait an hour for another rider to catch me just to get a tube. So
No flats?
no flats. No, I had no issues other than like the crank almost coming off. Like once I sorted that out, yeah, zero issues. This is the new Shimano GRX Di2. You'll probably start to see it on more bikes now. And basically, your regular Di2 gravel group has like a 50-34 in front. This has a 46-30, because if you're trying to do stuff like this, you usually don't need a ton of that top end with a 50 tooth, but you definitely want a lot more of the bottom end. And I find that with 11-34 in the back, you know, there's nice even steps, so when you're riding lots of road, you're not like making these huge jumps and throwing your cadence off, but you also have, I mean, with that 30-34, you have plenty of range to climb. And if I was using that too long, I would just hop off and walk. Like doing stuff like this, if there's really steep hills, like it makes sense just to pop off, walk a little bit, you know, give your butt a break. Like it's relaxing. So.
You say you're running a lot of, you're putting some extra stands in. Do you carry patches to patch the tire and extra stands to put in later or not?
I don't carry any extra stands, but a thing I carry, and we have them here at the shop, tire plugs. Basically, it's kind of like if you ever plugged a car tire, but all it is it's like a little sharp tool, and it's got a rubber plug in there, and you just stab it right where the hole is, and when you pull the tool out, it leaves the plug in the tire. And those are, you know, if you've never used them and you run tubeless, like those are awesome. I mean, I highly recommend them. I'd probably use 20 or 30 of them this year, like throughout the season, racing and riding.
So it's not the little threaded filaments, it's actually a patch with a rubber plug, a rubber tip on the end.
It just looks like a little twisted rubber braid, basically. There's a couple of different versions of them. The one I use is called Dynaplug, where they're a little pricier, but they're kind of like preloaded, if you will. They have a little brass tip. And so the tool, you just pop off the top like a pen. It's like a pen. You just stab your tire, and that brass, when you pull it out, leaves the plug in there. And then it vulcanizes to the tire. And what that means is it basically just kind of becomes one with the rest of the rubber. So you can, I have tires with plugs in them that have like another 1,000 miles on them. So that way, you know, you're not like throwing the tire away or ruining a good tire. Like I've used them like Margie, I used 2 during the race. It only cost me like maybe a minute. You just stop. A lot of times if you're quick enough, you don't even have to put air in it. So.
Problem is getting all the stands off of you after this.
Yes. Yeah, that's another key. Like if you get a puncture like that, you know, if the stands doesn't fill it quickly, I tell people actually put the hole facing up so that all the stands doesn't flood out of the tire. Because if you know, if it's gonna seal, it's gonna seal pretty quick. But if you sit there and just let all the stands bleed out, then you're not going to have any left for the plug to work. Because you do kind of need some left in there for the plug. So, yeah. What else, John?
Do you run a dynamo, or what do you do for charging as far as lights and GPS and that stuff?
That's a good question. So I ran the Garmin 1030, which you can get, if you turn all the tones and stuff off, you get like 15, 16 hours out of it. And I did run a dynamo primarily because I had just gotten the bike and I didn't have a wheel built up that would fit this. Like a dynamo hub, if you're not familiar, is basically the front hub has alternating magnets in it, and so when it rotates, it generates current. And you can use that current to power a light, and so basically you have lights as long as you're moving. The downsides are if you're not moving, you have no light. And then it's specific to that wheel. So like, you know, if you want to say use that light on another bike, the wheel has to fit. If it doesn't, you need a totally different setup. So what I did was I did battery powered lights, and I took this Acker, it's like a 20,000 milliamp hour pack, so I could charge. I brought 2 lights for the bar and 2 for the helmet, so 4 total. Wow. So it is a little extra weight, and then this is like a little brick.
pay the toll.
But basically, I'd plug one light in, use it when it was dead. You can just plug it into this pack and stick it in the frame bag, and then it charges, you know, doing its own thing. And same with like the Garmin, like I'll just put it in this bag, and I can snake my cord out. And you can just plug it in right there, and you can charge it while you're riding. So, yeah, if I was going to be doing like that ride and a bunch of other ones, I would invest in a dynamo hub though, and just carry one battery powered light. It's always good to have at least one, because yeah, like I said, if you're hiking a bike or something, you got no light, so it gets kind of weird.
Scary.
What else? Anybody?
How many lumens are the lamps that you ended up?
I do pretty well in low light, so like the helmet's 850 and that is 1100, but I run them at 100. So I would, unless it was like I was really trying to figure out how I was going, I ran them on the lowest setting all the time. And when they run them low, each light's good for about 6 hours. And they had 12 hours of darkness, so that was kind of not ideal. So if you do the ride in the summer, like the way I would ideally ride the ride is I would probably just ride and maybe ride into the night if it's nice. Because sometimes it's nice to ride at night if it's really hot time of year and you're on gravel and then you're like kind of like, oh, I'm riding gravel. Like just cruise through the night, you get some cool air, and it's actually really relaxing to ride at night. You know, and I would just ride it until like I was tired and then take a nap, ideally, you know, like toss the bivvy down, sleep for 3-4 hours, whatever. Like that's how I would like to do it in the summer sometime. So yeah. But yeah, this is yeah, if you don't want to ask a question in front of everybody, you can just grab me. You can always message me too. We'll be hanging out for a bit, having some beers and stuff. And we are gonna do a ride.
Yeah, we got like a 10-mile ride over to Big Bob's.
Yeah, do that, what, like half hour or something maybe?
Yeah.
So we'll hang out. I mean, feel free to come up and pick the bike up, check out the gear.
Thanks,
I laid out everything I have. So.
Thank you.
What an adventure. Woo.
Oh, and we have one other announcement.
Yes.